Welcome Dakota Gordon, CEO of Edlink, who's going to talk to us today about the role of data interoperability and data integrations in K-12 education. Hi, Dakota. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about Edlink and what your mission is?
Sure. Edlink is a company focused almost exclusively on interoperability. We have a unified API. We help companies connect to learning management systems and student information systems and more, mainly for the purposes of facilitating single sign-on, rostering, assignment and grade passback, attendance data, and so on. We recognize the challenges that vendors deal with when they're working with schools, and we want to make that as easy as possible so they're spending time focused on their core product and solution and not on interoperability.
What are the biggest challenges EdTech providers face when integrating their systems with existing K-12 data infrastructure, and how can they overcome them?
Sure. Happy to talk about that. The first one I think is geared towards earlier stage companies. I think integration and interoperability is something that's really, really important to think about from day one. Why is that? The reason is people will build software solutions without integrations in mind. Then when it comes time to integrate, because they have a request from a district, they realize that they've made one or more decisions that makes integration very difficult. As a quick example, a lot of systems allow teachers to also be students in classes for professional development or other purposes. If you built a system that doesn't allow for something like this, when it comes time to either take data into your system or export data out of your system, things can get pretty tricky. The second one is the sheer number of providers to integrate with. There are over 10,000 school districts, and I don't even know how many private schools in the country, and they use a multitude of different systems. These systems vary in age from 50 plus years old to maybe only 1 or 2 years old. They vary in complexity and capabilities and what data they're capable of ingesting or exporting. And simply the time to learn and research and then make decisions about each of these systems can be overwhelming for companies, even at enterprise scale. The third thing I would say is integration itself is harder in education for a simple reason. Topologically, Houston ISD looks a lot like IBM. There's about 500,000 stakeholders involved, maybe 1 million if you include parents. They all need accounts. They have thousands of different pieces of software that they use. They're very much an enterprise akin to Fortune 500. When you build integrations, they have to be ready to skip from day one, because even a small district could be several thousand people. And a lot of companies who maybe they're building an app that supports, I don't know, maybe they're used to building apps that support only a few dozen or a few hundred users at a time, can become quickly overwhelmed by the sheer volume of data and the sheer volume of changes that they need to make on a daily basis. Those are probably the 3 hardest things that companies deal with.
Many K-12 institutions struggle with siloed data. What are some best practices for breaking down these silos and ensuring seamless data sharing between platforms?
A lot of times districts think about collecting data to solve the problems that they are trying to deal with today. But the issue is the data that they need to deal with those problems may have happened 6 months ago or a year ago. So planning out and capturing data that's clean and accurate is very important, and it will pay dividends in the future. The second thing I would say is to really understand at least their goals today. What are your goals for data? Back when we worked with schools directly, my previous company, we would get a lot of schools that would ask us for analytics. And we asked them what that meant. What do you mean by analytics? What questions do you hope to answer? There were a lot of confused faces looking around. So we think it's really important for both business leaders and academic leaders to think about what questions they're trying to answer with data. I think that will give them a good foundation when going out into the market and looking for products or companies or services that can help them reach those goals. A piece of advice I have would be to take it easy on RFP requirements. Put things in as suggested, or your district is interested in exploring this, but I would shy away from having things be hard requirements. Vendors might be working with dozens or hundreds of districts that all have individual requests, and fulfilling those requests when it comes to interoperability can be challenging. I would say go into it with open eyes and don't expect too much.
What are some common misconceptions about data integrations in K-12 education, and how can districts avoid common pitfalls when implementing new systems?
A couple of misconceptions I think people have. First of all, how similar even categories of systems are to one another. For example, student information systems or learning management systems. They might have a lot of overlapping functionality, take two systems like PowerSchool and Infinite Campus. But under the hood, they can be dramatically different in their capabilities, in the way that they capture and model their data. And that can be very challenging for both vendors and for districts who might not understand why it's difficult for a vendor to ingest or export data to their system. Another misconception is around standards. Standards have definitely helped the industry a lot, but I think they're only as good as the companies who implement those standards. I think when people hear that something is standards compliant or standards conformant, they immediately imagine that it works seamlessly and flawlessly and to their expectations. And I think that's not exactly true all the time. There can be issues where people implement the standard incorrectly, and that can be their fault or not their fault. Back to earlier in the podcast, people make product decisions 20 years ago, before OneRoster was even invented, and now that product decision makes it very difficult for them to properly conform to the OneRoster spec. Second, just because you are compliant with something like OneRoster doesn't mean you implement the entirety of the OneRoster specification. It contains provisions for things like grade passback, but a lot of companies don't implement grade passback. That doesn't mean they're not compliant with OneRoster, but if you just think about OneRoster as an umbrella specification, you might be misleading yourself into thinking that software can do something that it cannot.
What role do you see interoperability standards, such as EdFi or OneRoster, playing in continuing to shape the future of K-12 data integrations, and how should EdTech providers prepare?
I think standards are great, and they really do help people save a lot of time. My one cautionary thing I'll say about standards is standards are typically backward-looking instead of forward-looking. I know there are probably people out there who say, no, but X standard is forward-looking. We're thinking about the future. I promise the reality on the ground of the people implementing those standards is they're mostly implementing things that people believed were solved problems years ago. Things like rostering, things like single sign-on, things like grade passback. There aren't yet standards for the next thing. Analytics, assessment, IEP, AI. There aren't standards for these things yet. So it can be very difficult when requiring standards compliance because you might be accidentally shutting out new and innovative solutions who are providing data or capturing data in a way that is not standards compliant.
With many districts using a patchwork of legacy systems and new platforms, what strategies can EdTech providers use to ensure smooth data integrations?
So we know there are a lot of different systems out there to integrate with. We get it. There's a lot of schools with a lot of different requirements. I would start with the basics. Start with the most important first. I'd also say don't focus on solving 100% of the problems for 100% of the people. You have a mission at your company, whether that mission is to help struggling students or to teach students how to speak Spanish. You have a mission. Don't stray from that mission just to integrate with every system out there under the sun. It's really important that you do spend time and effort focusing on your core product. That's what's going to help students. Integrations should be facilitating that learning experience. It should not be the end all that you're spending your time and money on. My last piece of advice also calls back to something earlier. As early as you can in your company's journey, I would think about integrations, both ingestion of data from other platforms and exporting data to other platforms. What tends to work best is sticking to generics. Look at the enterprise, see what they do there. In a lot of ways, enterprise integrations are beyond K-12 EdTech integrations right now. Look at the standards and look at what they do, best practices. You don't want to make decisions that really box you in later. I'm not saying you have to integrate with everything right now, but be thoughtful about how you approach your software development such that you can integrate in the future if it makes sense for your product and for your students. I have one more piece of advice. Unless you are an AI company where your data is specifically your unique point of differentiation, I would say be open with your data. Allow companies to integrate, allow schools to get data out of your platform. Early on, it might seem like it's a good idea to prevent them from doing that. It raises switching costs for the school. It makes them harder to migrate to other systems. but in the long run, it will pay dividends to open up.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dakota. Dakota Gordon is the CEO and co-founder of Edlink. From their website, Edlink is the fastest and easiest way to integrate your learning platform with school data systems. Edlink currently supports 140 plus EdTech companies and helps over 75 million people use their EdTech products seamlessly with their school's LMS, SIS, and identity management platform, like Clever and ClassLink. They're trusted to exchange sensitive data securely by EdTech companies, school and IT administrators, and district leaders in over 5,000 educational institutions and growing.
Thanks for listening to Project Unicorn's Data Magic Podcast.